Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Ballogy. Manage and measure your players' skill development and increase accountability year-round utilizing the Ballogy app. Boost inter-squad competition with drills backed by the National High School Basketball Coaches Association, including a 40-shot Ballogy skills assessment. Please visit ballogy.com/teams for information on how you can provide this resource for your team. Tell me a little bit about, taking over at a place where you've been an assistant coach and kind of in your first year as a head coach there. Tell me how that's been for you.
Man, I'll take you back a little further. I was just having a conversation with someone this weekend. I'm in the process of getting student assistants, and they always want to ask the pros and cons. So, originally from El Paso, Texas, I was born and raised there. My first college job was under Coach Barbie at UTEP, and I was a student manager there, and I was one of 7 at the time. And so I was, the work for free guy. And this is the time when VCRs and you had to carry the TV up the stands in the Don Haskins Center, which was no easy task. But it was a great time and I loved it. And was there a second year. And then I left to the University of Houston. Well, James Dickey took over at the University of Houston. His brother, Randall Dickey, was an assistant at UTEP. So it was just by the grace that the overlap happened for me to be able to continue to work. So I was just going to Houston to get a degree in sports administration. It just so happened it was in my plans to stay involved in the sport. Finished there at the University of Houston. I needed to do an internship, and Coach Estelle was an assistant coach at the University of Houston at the time, and he got this job. And so I came and did an internship for him during the summer, and he offered me a grad assistant job in 2014 here at Kingsville. So I went 2014 to 2017, graduated. We were trying to help find a job here. It wasn't really working out. Didn't really want to leave, but wanted to keep pursuing opportunities. And I met Scott Schumacher, head coach at Blinn Junior College, at a couple clinics and TABC showcases. And his Blinn opened up a second assistant job, and it just so happened that I'd recently made a relationship with him. So I've just been very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time, and was under Coach Schumacher for 9 months. And the assistant coach, Mark Matthew, that was here at Kingsville, decided to switch and do a different career. And Coach Estelle called me back and said, "Hey, would you want to come back and be the assistant?" And, it wasn't so much that I didn't have a good time at Blinn. It was just this place was really special.
Yeah.
And the decision proved to be right, because 5 years later, Coach Estelle's now, one of the top assistants at North Texas. And I'm here, was able to be promoted and move up to be the head coach. So Texas A&M Kingsville has been very good to me.
Man, what a cool story. I love the fact that, how you started out as a student assistant and student manager, and kind of worked your way up. I would imagine that just gives you such an appreciation for your staff, all the little things that they do, where there may be somebody like I think of myself I started out right as a varsity assistant in high school. I never went through the junior high times and the JV times and doing multiple sports for the most part. And so I don't have that appreciation as much because I didn't go through it myself, but I'm sure you do.
I've joked at every step I've took up. I joke it, but it's the truth that you can take the man and promote him, but you can't take him out of his habits. And so, Coach Estelle, one of the first times, funny story is first time here as a GA, in Division II, grad assistants have way more responsibilities as a grad assistant than you would at a Division I.
Yeah.
Because the manpower is not as much. And so one of the first times Coach and I had a conversation, he looked at me and he goes, "Hey man, you're not a manager anymore. Like, you're a coach. You got to be doing this. You can't just be running around worried about the balls and worried about towels." And it was just in my habit. And as I move up forward, our assistants now, Coach Carlos Robinson, who's first time here, and Chauncey Thomas, who was a player for us, turned GA for us, and we were able to now make him an assistant. So he's kind of climbed the ladders here at Kingsville as well. And he looks at me all the time. He goes, "Coach, you're the head coach now, man. I got this. Let me take care of this." And I say, "Look, man, it's my roots."
Yeah.
And so I see film needs to be set up, and I help out, and I do this and I do that, and I sometimes have to stop myself a little bit to say, it's a pro and a con. It shows the hard work, but it's now my job to help guys like Chauncey, who are young and upcoming professionals, be like, "Hey, this is the route you have to do. Yeah. This is the work you have to grind. This, do that." And so I'm kind of the in between the big brother and the little brother at the same time.
I don't know if you feel this way, but there is a little bit of peace, I think, that comes from doing those habits or activities that we've done for a long time. Like my thought is sweeping the floor. There's been times where we have a manager that's in second period athletics with us, and I have a former player who's helping out at the school that's also one of my varsity assistants now that's in there with me, which I've never had before, that many bodies. But I like to kind of get that mop out and get pushing it, and he'll be like, "Coach, let me do that." And it's great if he wants to do that, but then there's a part of me that's like, man, I kind of enjoy doing this. So I'm sure there's a little bit of a struggle for you of like, these are things I kind of like to do, but you need to delegate and you need to be passing some of those things on.
5 years of assistant, 8 years total of assistant, including GA. So my habits, it's not that it became redundant, but I've been doing it for so long at the same place. And we had our first football game this weekend. So I'm meeting with alumni and people who I haven't seen since I've been promoted over. And they've all asked me, what's the biggest difference? And, the 6 inches, when you move over, as everybody claims it to be, it feels like I'm at a new job at the same place. To where, the 8 years I was learning new things. Coach still would give me the ropes here, take care of this now, take care of this now. And now that the ropes are in my hands, it feels, even though it's the same job that I've been doing for 8 years, it just feels like a new job. And so it comes with the territory of going back to the original conversation. That's my piece. So whenever things are going, I know how to do this. Let me take care of this while I start thinking about all the other stuff that so it just becomes kind of like the calm before the storm type of deal.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like there's so little in my control, but you know what? I can sweep that floor. I can make that floor look good. It's a pretty impressive climb in 8 years. Right. You said 2014 you were a student assistant or a G.
It was my first year as a grad assistant.
Yeah, grad assistant.
Just finished a student internship.
That's to be a head coach already. You said something early on, and that just jarred my memory. I wanted to go back to it, which is about the relationships that you're able to create along the way. And like, you're not where you are today by accident. And because you just stumbled upon this place, those relationships that you built as a GA, as an assistant, and at different places, have allowed you to be where you are today.
No, it was, one, through the grace of God, and two, through just, like I said at the beginning, a name nobody will ever know is Louis Morrow. And Louis and I went to high school together. He was a manager at UTEP a year ahead of me, and he's the one who got me in the door. And so I'll forever be grateful for Louis for ever introducing me to get in the door of college basketball, because without him, I would have never started this process.
Isn't that so? Yeah, it's so. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and he'll never know it, but without him, I wouldn't be where I am today. And that's just, I think it's so important. You reach a milestone and you climb and you get to a point, but at the same time, if you remember who you are, the climb doesn't seem as strong or as, man, I made it. It just becomes like a, wow, look how far I've come.
It's difficult to have an attitude of gratitude and complain at the same time. Like almost impossible. Right. You're probably not complaining if you have that attitude, and vice versa. I think it'd be really cool for coaches to just take a moment wherever you are right now and think back to some of those small relationships like that were almost like the catalyst, like the reason. And I go back to my first coach I ever had in Pennsylvania when I was in 4th and 5th grade, created that relationship with him. He moved down here to Texas to the colony, and going into my freshman year that summer, I came down to attend a basketball camp he was working, met Tommy Thomas. He convinced me that I needed to move down here because everything's bigger in Texas and everything is greater. But that my dreams of playing college basketball could happen here. Flew back home, told my parents on the way from the airport back, and we decided to change our lives dramatically. But it's all because of that one relationship with that coach. I think when you think about those little moments, I mean, that span across like 25, 30 years now,
right?
That just so much gratitude to me comes from that.
Butterfly effect, no? I mean, you kind of trickle down to, this is how it started. This is what would have happened if, people always ask the man, I wish, not to me, but just in general, people always have the conversation of, man, I wonder what if. And it's sometimes people have to remember, well, why don't you just stay in the now? Let's focus on this and let's see how far we can get with this and look back 5 years from now and go, hey, look, it worked out.
Yeah, it's such a great point. And I was watching the other day, or just scrolling through, and as you're not supposed to do, just aimlessly scrolling through. But there's this old, The Lion King, the first one, and it's where Rafiki, I think is the name, swings, or he hits Simba over the head with the stick. And he's like, ow, that hurt. Why'd you do that? And he said, it doesn't matter. It's in the past. He's like, but it still hurts. Like, yes, it still can hurt. The past can hurt. But you can either dwell on that pain or learn from it. And he swings it again and he ducks. I just thought, man, there's like so many great coaching parallels with that little clip right there, or just in life where you're right. Like there's things that my 20s were a mess, man. Like there's things that I would love to do differently. But at the same time, as long as I learn from those and I'm not repeating those mistakes, I mean, you could take that on the floor too. Your player does a dumb thing. Hey, that's in the past. Get past it. Just don't repeat that action again. Learn from what you did. I don't know. I just think thank you to Lion King for a great lesson right there.
Yeah, Walt Disney knew what he was doing a long time ago.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.